Welcome to Political Teacher. I'm Ben Marcellus, joined by Michael Cohen. Moments ago, Donald Trump held a press conference in the Oval Office with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Donald Trump was asked if he still thinks Ukrainian President Zelensky is a dictator. Take a look at
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Is that what you said? And he thinks this is all one big show, either that or it's cognitively addled. Then Donald Trump is asked what would happen if Russian forces attacked UK forces in Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping mission. Would the United States help the United Kingdom? Donald Trump basically says no.
Between our two countries, that is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whatever necessary, we absolutely back each other up, and that's the
You can get collaboration by yourselves.
well.
You know what? It's not even funny. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's so sick seen the American president talking about how many lives have been lost in Ukraine as well as Russia. Could you take Russia on? Absolutely they could. You know why? Because they would still have France. They would still have Italy. They would still have their allies fighting alongside with them. Russia does not have what Russia wants to support. They don't have the nuclear armies. Everything Russia has is old. Remember that. Yeah, I want to share this with you as well. As part of this press conference, you have Donald Trump being asked more questions about Russia, and Trump says that Russia has been acting very well, compliments Russia over and over again.
Say this, as I said yesterday, when you're talking about peacekeeping force, we have to make a deal first. Right now, we don't have a deal. We have Russia, we have Ukraine. I think we're very well advanced. I think Russia has been acting very well. Representatives Sivakov and Scott and Rocco and JD, we're all involved, every one of us, in a lot of.
It should be noted that Russia has ultimately escalated its attacks on Ukraine.
Yeah.
Notice Donald Trump uses
Right now.
We reported on the United States exploiting the access of evil earlier in the week with Russia, North Korea, Belarus, and Hungary to vote against a United Nations resolution condemning Russia's unlawful invasion of Ukraine. Then Donald Trump is asked about Ukraine joining NATO, to which Donald Trump blames the desire for Ukraine to join NATO for the invasion on Ukraine that took place in
The Europeans want Ukraine to be part of NATO as part of this deal. Are you willing to budge on that at all, or is it a
Well, I could be very nice and say, oh, well, we'll work for it. But it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. That's what started this whole thing. Biden said that, and then all of a sudden the guns started. And that was one of the primary reasons this started. And this was long before President Putin. They never said it was an impossibility. So we can say, oh, gee, well, we'll try, but that's something that's just not going to happen. And then the other question they ask is about the land. When you get your land back, well, they fought long and hard on the land, and you and I will be discussing that. We're going to certainly try and get as much as we can back. But on the NATO, it's just not, that's not going to happen.
Watch that. It is frankly humiliating to see that what is representing the United States right now so disturbingly, so dangerously. I'll make this comment also. I was very disappointed with Pierre Starmer's performance there. To me, Pierre Starmer fact-checked Trump maybe once or twice. There was an easy softball question about what his view of Trump's statements about Canada becoming a 51st state, which Pierre Starmer kind of totally flubbed. And, to me, it was very different than when French President Emmanuel Macron was in there and seemed to have more of a command of the room than Starmer, was just my evaluation. And, I was, that's my initial reflection. I don't think Starmer is not really advised on world news. I just think that this is shit. And I think at the end of the day, that he's not prepared to pull something out. Let me be very clear about something. Again, having been around Trump for a decade and a half, it's really not easy to sit in front of him. I don't know the reason why. People think, just easy boss that he can't say anything. I cannot tell you the number of people who never worked for Trump who came in, whether it was guys like you name it, that would come to the Trump board, sit down in the chair, I'd be sitting directly next to them, and they would not correct Trump on something which was blatantly wrong. It was, I can't tell you the number of people. I mean,
Henry Kissinger, as an example, when we were talking about Middle East, Trump said something which was just legitimately false. And Kissinger didn't respond, didn't correct it. Perlmutter did, but Kissinger would. And I'm saying to myself, wow, that's what you're seeing here right now. You're seeing a fear that now Trump will come after him the same way he's going after Zelensky, the same way he's going after Trudeau, and that's not what this guy wants. He's acting the same way as members of Congress act, which is not good and not to the benefit of their people or the constituents.
You know, and I think you better than anyone, Cohen, can give me guidance though about when you try to appease Donald Trump and he senses any form of weakness in that interaction, then he views that as a way to further pound on you and humiliate you and break. You don't, you know, it's so obvious when you look at Trump's knowledge that he has his words and he has his bullying. And ultimately, when the words and bullying don't work, he backs up. But oftentimes, the words and the bullying were reasons that, for me, it's just like, I get that he's got the force of the United States behind him, you know, an army and military, like, I get that, but, you know, to your point, you show up there, you're a Keir Starmer, you know, you don't have to show up there, you show up there, you know that's gonna happen, and so to look a little bit here in the headlights as while that was taking place, you know, to me, it's like, all that sends a message to Trump.
$8 on,
And people go, well, that was his strategy. If you
laundry.
lie or whatever, then you won't bring any more trouble to me. And obviously disagree. It attracts more problems the moment Trump sends any bit of what he considers to be a sign of deference or
Are you going to give these guys fresh water?
Yeah, well, I want that water, so you say, good seeds.
Yeah, but the
No one thinks
Mary's,
think about yourself
Mary's need water.
as
You
Mike
also
Tyson
told me to remind you
is
to
he,
check the eggs.
okay? And no matter where you walk, you know you're the toughest guy on the street. And here, he's taking advantage, right? So as the gang, Marcellus, morphed into Mike Tyson and his absolute crime. Everyone that you walk past, you push. Everyone that you walk past, you kick in the leg, or you hit in the stomach. And then you say, why the hell would you do something like that? This is because I can. Well, that's what he's doing. He's using the full force of the United States of America. He's using our military might, which the world acknowledges is far superior to anybody else's. Fight is multiple. So he's now wielding the big stick. And as a bully, he intends to wield that stick, not against his adversary, but against his allies. And this to me is the part that I don't understand. You know, he wants to be the king of the United States of America, the monarch, the dictator, the ruler, whatever you want to call it.
One way.
He has the ability to be
You
the
get some
leader
for screwing.
of the free world.
Tomato
He would
juice.
be the guy that everybody comes to, which I know
To
is
keep your
part of
stomach
the
from
work.
bothering.
But
One piece of
being
toast.
that leader for, as you call it, the axis of terror, to me, makes absolutely no sense. It actually goes against
Yeah.
things that I
You ready for that? Or we can do that for
over
dinner.
and over.
Why don't you
Don't
cook some
know
veggies?
what the hell is going
I
on
want you to give
inside his head.
these guys some water.
You know, it just seems
I was
that that's
hoping
where
you
his
would cook the
knowledge
but
gravitates
that's okay.
to. It is. You know,
It's
if you
okay.
think about that type of personality that is unfit for leadership positions generally, of course, unfit for the leadership position
How about
like
some
the president
cereal?
of a large organization.
How
There are
about
certain
some
kinds of
cereals?
right?
Frozen?
Or lose a lot of their
I'll go
money.
get it.
How they spend their time is not built
And they still want your children.
you know, it's easier for Donald Trump, lazier, and he feels it more gratifying
Thank you.
to go after countries that are trying to be helpful, the same way if people were helpful to you in your life.
What's going on?
Down versus, actually confronting your real problems. The real problems and the real issues that are confronting America, is the actual geopolitical threat of Russia. But Donald Trump spends his time trying to appease that enemy, trying to be part of that crew while attacking Canada. And Canada has Canada wants to be power, exercise hard power. We've seen Canada in wars before. Canadians don't like war. They try to avoid it at all costs. But they keep a smaller home front.
Yeah, come on. Let's be clear.
You see Canada World War I, World War II. Canada's the most vicious military with the war.
Yeah, there's 62,000 versus 2.2 million of our military. As far as aircrafts, naval carriers, there's a whole. My family lives in Toronto. My dad is Canadian, so he gave up his citizenship. He became American. I love Canada. I love my cousins dearly. I've been literally hundreds of times to Canada to visit them. Let me be clear. Militarily, Canada is not a top-tier country. Right? It's who they are today. And Trump is not wrong when he says they rely on us. But there's a quid pro quo that goes on.
Push back. They
We take a lot. We take a lot from Canada as well. It's not like it's for free. All right? And that's the part that Trump is trying to drill into the heads of Americans, that we are acting as the police force, as the military force to Canada, so we don't get anything back. Everything isn't in apples to apples quid pro quo. They give us a lot, we give them a lot, and that's how relationships are built. What he wants to do is compare everything dollar to dollar, and that's not how diplomacy works. There's always somebody at the table who is the strongest, plain and simple. And to those people that think that this is some sort of that Donald has dementia, or so, it is not dementia that he's dealing with right now. It is the concept of pure and total absolute power that he is craving. And there are people breathing that shit into his ear where he actually believes that he will live forever. He actually believes that he can be the first Tsar of America. That's what he's believing. There's something really wrong going on there, but it is not dementia.
It looks like it. I hear you. It certainly looks like there are, cognitive issues, but again, I'm not a medical doctor. It's an opinion. Who the heck knows what's going on or what's not going on there? But whether he's saying he misremembers things as, that he thinks this is all one big game or one big joke. These are very serious times where words and being clear-eyed, clearly worded matters, because the ambiguity causes a great deal of problems. And what we're seeing domestically too is how what they are doing with Doge and elsewhere are just absolutely destroying people's lives. If you just take a look at this, Elon Musk making a post that a few weeks ago, when was this? A few weeks ago, saying that the fork in the road letter that he sent out on January 28, 2025, and today he posted, there is a shortage of top-notch air traffic controllers. If you you have retired but are open to returning to work, please consider doing so. They are now putting out tweets or X posts on social media to try to recruit people after firing all of these government workers. As it seems like every other day there's some incident now involving airplanes. I want to share with you this as well. This is from this ridiculous cabinet meeting that took place, where you had Elon Musk basically leading the cabinet meeting. So he's in the White House. I'm not sure if they were in the Roosevelt room or which room they were in there. They're in the White House. We have Elon Musk wearing a black MAGA hat. They're dressed in a t-shirt and a suit jacket. In a cabinet meeting.
Don't make it
And you have
too
Elon
easy.
doing his whole thing where he's like,
That's for me.
okay.
Okay.
Mistakes. I remember when I made the mistake about Ebola, and I fired the Ebola. I hired the Ebola people, and then we hired the Ebola people back here, and we got that good from the cabinet. Just the optics of this, and then the execution of what they're doing is so dangerous. Play.
Just go to voters.gov. Line item by line item, specify each item. So, and we will make mistakes. We work with voters, but when we make mistakes, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola prevention. I think we all wanted Ebola prevention. So we restored Ebola prevention immediately. And then we started
It's truly amazing, isn't it? I mean, the fact that, yes, we will all acknowledge that Elon Musk is rich. All right, that's an inarguable comment. But who gives a shit? He's sitting there and he's laughing about making mistakes about Ebola. It's like listening to RFK Jr. talk about, but measles, people die every year from measles. They're up like 40% in just the first month since he's been confirmed. I mean, this whole thing, that clown car cabinet show, is so disgraceful. Is to watch them clapping for the stupid shit. Anybody that disagrees with Elon and doesn't want him to carry out his plan, so well, let us go. Keep your right at it. But it starts to applaud for it. The rest of the monkeys start applauding back. What the fuck? Seriously, what the actual fuck is going on? Our country,
What are we listening to?
that are running our country. None of these
Or is
things
this
make sense. Look,
people, or is this
no
regular
trolls,
news? Are they
some
starting to
supporters,
say fuck regular news?
I don't care.
Good
I don't
commentary.
believe every single person with us right
Okay,
now.
so
I don't think that there's a single
it's not like listening to a
right now in
podcast.
this country that wants to
They're
see
still
Ebola
appropriate,
in the
right?
United States of America or
I
any.
mean, this is
Now,
not
a lot of people say,
children.
well, better there than here. Sure, I think we can all believe in that. But if there's something that we can do about it, if there's a cure for it, a vaccination for it, absolutely. We don't want anybody to die from Ebola. We don't want anybody to die from measles, mumps, rubella. You know, the last outbreak was 2015. We've managed to eradicate with vaccinations, but because of the nonsense surrounding COVID vaccinations, all of a sudden now, it's no longer acceptable, or it becomes acceptable to say, I don't want my kid vaccinated. And you know what? Here's what we're seeing already. Two children, but no reason at all, gone. All right? Two, and this is not a joke. This is, there you go, U.S. reports first measles death in 10 years. I think there are two now, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, one, two, whatever it might be, there's something wrong. When you have the ability to prevent that, and for whatever reason you choose not to, there's something seriously wrong.
You know, one of the things that COVID ravaged our country, by the way, the death numbers for COVID and flu right now are still, very, very high. And NIH cuts and other working group cuts. One of the questions is will we have flu vaccines for the next flu season. We fortunately still have vaccine, also former President Biden for this season. But what about for next season when that's not a priority? Those are the types of federal employees who are getting fired and who are getting cut. You know, it was just kind of people would be dying in mass, and for MAGA, you know, maybe it was because they were living on their wage algorithms, that the digital wage was exceeding the literal debt. You know, that the digital wage exceeded like real world things. And I would be like, y'all are doing things and taking actions that are quite literally killing yourselves. And there is like a disconnect between that, or maybe it is just why they call it a death cult sometimes. And when we're seeing little kids dying unnecessarily in areas where people are not getting vaccinated because of agendas being pushed, and then we have RFK Jr., this cabinet meeting, telling the American people at a cabinet meeting that this is normal. That this is what normally happens, and it isn't normal. It is in any other era, this would be viewed as grounds for immediate resignation, immediate termination. Yet every day you have Trump and these MAGAs flood the zone with all of these things. As prices are surging, even buying eggs, they're at record highs. You had Donald Trump at the cabinet even talking about how, you know, egg prices are, you know, blaming the current administration, pretending he's not part of the current administration. I want to let people know the distractions, but then I want to remind people of the broken promises, and we'll get into all of that. So I want to remind everybody about Michael Cohen's the blue one. I want to remind
Jeff, don't
everybody
forget
about
to check
I didn't know it was coming on.
the eggs.
And the dough. And the dough, that's a great
Did you
conversation.
put the applesauce away?
Similarities.
who the Joe.
To Donald Trump. Before you move on, I just want to ask, do you think that Trump is putting up with any of Elon Musk's bullshit if he wasn't rich? If he didn't have money, do you think that he would have been chosen for this Doge program, this agency, whatever the hell it is that none of us know? And of course, the answer is no. In fact, if he was already this crap, they'd have to take him out in a straitjacket. Sorry.
Let's take our first quick break of the show when we come back. Michael Cohen, we've got the FBI now bringing in UFC fighters. That's their new agenda. UFC and FBI are getting rid of FBI agents for the President Patel's agendas. Also, you have the Department of Justice now saying that they're not going to turn over the Epstein files. I wonder why. They handed over a little notebook today. They said, we've got it. They just turned over the phone logs that were produced back in 2021 that actually has Trump's name on it. And then they're saying, we did it. Even some Republicans like Anna Paulina Luna, who's like running this committee that's trying to get these records, is like, this is not what we asked for. This is like the biggest unforced error by the Trump administration, because we know why. We'll take a quick break and we'll be so quick.
Throughout my life, I literally drink one type of a drink, a specific 12-year single malt scotch. And the truth is, I never had more than two in a single night. And I can remember when I was around like 16 years old, I had more than two one night. And I woke up the next day with a massive headache. So if you're one of those people who partakes, let's just say a little more than you should, here's something that you should know. Sol's out-of-office THC beverages, they work as an alternative because first, they're low-calorie, second, they're gluten-free, and most importantly, they don't cause hangovers. Now, I just want to say thank you to Sol for sponsoring this podcast. And if you listen to the show, you've heard me rave about Sol's out-of-office gummies. Well, the team at Sol nationwide. The out-of-office beverages, they not only come in two mouth-watering flavors, raspberry lemon and cucumber melon lime, they also offer two different doses. You can get 2.5 milligrams.
I was wondering if you could
and
move
5
the camera.
milligrams each. So feel the
Victoria, you got time for me again?
12 or
I mean, I
24
just wonder.
so that you can take the THC in any way that you want.
No, not.
You have more of that.
Like what?
Where it was. Oh, that looks like a joke.
Show or just really share it with friends at the next hangout. I mean, truly, whatever floats your boat. And he's a nice fun guy.
All the birds.
My brother and sister duo,
I need to look at your phone.
Mike is a former world-ranked professional boxer, and Jamie is a former professional speaker who had the desire to create natural alternatives to medication that tackles problems that they were dealing with themselves, like sleeplessness, anxiety, focus, and pain. And that's not all. That's not all that Soul's got.
What are you
So
doing?
whether you're looking for a sleep aid and focus,
Yeah.
Soul has a
Right,
variety
right.
of things covered. Plus, all of Soul's products are grown right here in the USA, organically farmed, and again, will be free. So if you want to feel your best, head over to getsoul.com. That's GETSOUL.com and use code BEAT for 30% off your order. That's 30% off your order using code BEAT. One last time, getsoul.com and code BEAT for 30% off.
Wiring down.
Welcome back. Political beatdown, great ad reads. You know, look, you're having even like right-wing influencers like Dave,
You know what?
saying things like, if I'm gonna be fair,
Do I need to move out of this spot?
why is the release of the Epstein list always a shit show? What's the point of moving out illegal criminals while somehow becoming a safe Why is crypto in the world? Trump is crypto? How far does Tesla stock have to crash before Elon goes back to work? You know, and look, those are all fair questions right there. But the questions that are left out there is why are prices surging? Why can Americans afford groceries when the former President Biden?
I want to see inside the cages.
Why are unemployment numbers surging? Why is consumer confidence in the absolute gutter right now? Why does Trump double and triple down on these tariffs, which I suppose on March 4th, the deal that he made with Canada and Mexico expires, and now he's going to do across the board tariffs on Canada and Mexico? Why wasn't there peace in Ukraine in 24 hours? And so Cohen, I think this is not like, oh, liberals, are pissed, but conservatives are hot. You have a core group of
Kind of cold out there.
25, 30% of the country who are still living.
We already have them.
Whatever it is, they get a piece of
Can you
paper.
lower this camera?
All of the Epstein files.
Let me go down on the screen.
Transparency. Donald Trump told them about the gold card that he's selling Russian oligarchs. Trump said at the press conference, Russian oligarch gold cards with $5 million. $15 billion. Will be told that there's no tax on Amazon, tax on Social Security, tax on overtime in the budget, which is not mentioned at all. They'll go and tell me, we did it. But I think Cohen, I do think we're never going to get that 30%. They're brainwashed.
But I don't know about that. Let me say this. I'm not so sure that you're right. You see, when it's their kid that's going to be going to school, including open school, because they can't afford to send the kid lunch, that's when they're going to start to see. Look, there's a lot of trolls that decide to join us. They can't help themselves. You're never going to convince a troll or anybody anything negative about Trump, which is exactly what you're saying. The only time that they will feel the pain is when it hits them in their doorstep. When it's their children that have an issue, when it's their job that is now being terminated because those decided that that whole agency doesn't need to exist anymore. And they will turn around and say to themselves, like those whole create commercials, what the fuck did I do? Seriously, what did I do? It is only then will we be able to convince them. Sit back, shut up, stop the trolling, stop trying to protect somebody who doesn't give a flying shit about you. He doesn't know you will be grab your pencil, will be beast. You understand that? He doesn't care about you. The greatest one in this, it's going to be, let's talk about this, but I didn't know the greatest one in the history of the world is Donald Trump, a guy who was born with a platinum spoon in his mouth. Not a gold spoon, not a silver spoon, a platinum spoon in his mouth. Convincing the American people, that silent majority, I don't know, the dingbats, that he is one of them, and that he cares about them, and that he and only he can save them. From what? We don't know, but don't worry, that putting in is under the bed or in the closet, and he will stop them from coming and pushing you. And this is exactly what he has managed to convince these, let's just call them mentally inferior morons, right? And until they understand that the things that he is doing and the things that the folks are doing, they will not understand what you and I are saying on any day of the week.
What's so interesting is that whenever, I get the nasty DMs from the trolls and haters, they always send the fakest. It's always what worked them up is these memes that are never true. And sometimes you get so big, but every now and then I'll respond.
Okay, everybody.
And it's never a good and they send you more things. I'm going to give you this video that's you go, show me where it is. And they mention where that's in social support. It's not there. The email basically, what about this? It's like another like the Epstein files are all released and Trump did it. That's the thing we have to wired. Why is this the stuff that gets you so animated? Just like, look, the reality is that there are so many states, red states, that rely on the federal programs that help give these states that Medicaid money as well. And people are going to lose their oh, we're not paying there's nothing in there. And it's like, it is. The energy and commerce committee's portfolio includes that. So if you do an $80 billion cut to energy and commerce, because energy and commerce is basically code word for Medicaid, which is the biggest expenditure, you basically need your money. Almost all of it. And then they go to their next one.
Did you get those guys?
Oh, we're just going for the fraud. We're just going
deal food today?
Why are you replacing the DOJ officials with this?
Can you get the budgies some teal food?
You are investigating. No one disagrees that Medicaid fraud is something that does exist, but ironically, some of these sectors of Medicaid fraud exist. Surprise.
Why do you do that? Is that safe? Nobody's going to get the head cut off? Because the next no place tomorrow. One of the most is
Where do you want it to go?
That's very top of the table. That's good. Want to move that one?
Where do that?
Can you move that back over to the door?
Well, I'm trying to carry the boy right down and see that.
Okay. Yeah, they'll probably go on with this.
That's down here.
Well, there's nothing there's no way for them to do it. That's not gonna ruin the fan, is it? Sweeping the stuff directly to it. I mean, I don't think they'd do it right away. You put something in front of the door, so that put something in front of the door so the wind doesn't slap.
Not the rage algorithm.
When the car breaks down, you take it for the pilot with no hesitation. You need it, and it's not something the motorcycle thinks to himself. Look, I know I can. And then you think the exact same way about me. But the reality is, it might be more thankfully, you can get access to personalized EV treatment without ever stepping outside your door. It's changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatment from the comfort and appeal of your own couch. HIMS provides access to a range of not-trusted EV treatments like chewable Hartman's and Viagra and Cialis and the generics up to 95% cheaper. Hear that? 95% cheaper. The process is also 100% online, so that there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. What you do is you just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment options and will prescribe your medication outpatient directly to you for free. And there's no insurance needed, and one low price covers everything from treatment to ongoing care. Now, with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the easy option that works best for you. So start a free online visit today at hims.com/feed. That's HIMS.com/feed for your personalized EV treatment options. Again, that's hims.com/feed. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required and price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Welcome back. This is political media. Michael Cohen. So what do you do? Ads like that. It's,
I don't think you should be doing that.
Okay. I think you do it so well that you do it. We need people who can authentically speak to me. So Cohen, talk to us though about what we were saying. You got people who vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? I mean, someone like the person you mentioned, can be insulted to their face, like by Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think we have this clip of her right here where she goes, these jobs that are being cut, these federal jobs, they're not real jobs, they're fake jobs.
You can protest all you want outside departments of this government. You can protest all you want. But the American people disagree. agree with you. You're protecting the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is not a business. Those are not real jobs producing federal revenue. By the way, they're consuming taxpayer dollars. Those jobs are paid for by the American tax people who work real jobs, earn real income, pay federal taxes, and then pay these federal employees. Federal employees do not deserve their job. Federal employees do not deserve their paycheck. And these are jobs that can be fired at will.
Imagine that our taxpayers dollars are going toward it. It's so insulting.
You have Mike Johnson saying that. He's got the algorithm stolen through your data right now. It's right. And Congress, we have oversight. The Congress, we haven't been able to do that job. Even though we were elected, they requested the insight. How many of the applicants was not forthcoming, right? They're not transparent. That's the whole point. That's the problem. That's the deep state we're talking about. So they were hired for Congress. We didn't know that USAID was funding drag shows in Peru or whatever, transgender operas in Colombia or whatever, Like, yes, but Elon has cracked the code. He is now inside the agency. They created this algorithm to constantly crawl into the data. This is from his office. The data does a lot. We're going to be able to get the information and really transform the way the program works at the end of it. As a very exciting prospect, it is truly very, very long information. It's called the United States Constitution. And by law, unless it's laws, and the like really are. Yeah. So imagine that he's got, he has the AI tool. He told me himself, they're going to go ahead and they're going to sift through the data and they're going to go through transgender, should I say, or penis. Maybe that'll get some reaction. What else should we talk about? Let's talk about deep state, Epstein. What else should we talk about? So we know you have all of these algorithms. It's very complicated. They do research on our own. So I mean, what the hell are we even? What the hell are we even? What the hell is that? So it's actually quite revolutionary. We allow a guy who made $30 billion from the government, Washington Post, full access to Social Security and the data and medical records. In fact, he now has it. Guys coming in big balls who are working for Elon, big balls have had to do. Is that they've all got, don't you love this, Americans? I'm watching this. These are crazy people. I think, look, we got these MAGA Republicans like Joe Mason. We really need something is a $250 bill. And I'm grateful to announce that my drafting legislation to correctly be to design a $250 bill for Donald Trump. High inflation has destroyed the economy. Now we need the most valuable bill for the most valuable president. Then you have Donald Trump posting 1,000 videos of like self, like dancing, like shaking with it. And then they sell on the beach after genocide with Benjamin Netanyahu drinking. It's an alcoholic drink. Trump hotels because they trust God. Elon Musk throwing up in the air on beaches in Gaza. Giant golden statues of Donald Trump. And then you have this photo of women with beards wearing bathing suits with their faces exposed on the beaches in Gaza. And I just showed this photo and this is a guy from Donald Trump would look like in this skin tone match the photo around his eyes. He just have fun sleeping. And I think his photo right here is something that I want to show. Not to mock Donald Trump, but this whole thing that we're looking at a man who paints his face orange, who has captured a political party, and the Republicans, who's driving America into the ground every single day. Obviously, when you have these spineless Republicans like Mike Johnson, like, the other, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Federal workers are not real people.
Can I have another bite?
As a human being, I'm like, what the hell am I freaking watching here?
You know, it's a great question. Serves me just so many. I hate to say it because it's just such an easy one. It has to go to Elon Musk. As I watched today on television, I saw different channels that were outside of the various different agencies. As we saw young federal workers with legal boxes in hand, as they were told to clean out their desks, they had 10 minutes to clean out their desks. And they're walking out with their boxes together as a group of
Can I have another bite?
my heart broke. Now, I'm not going to say that it's not what is easy. People know that they're but you dismantle entire agents.
Dr. Bobby?
Oh, yeah.
I see that one.
I'm like, okay. You know?
Yeah.
It's so terrible.
That's awesome. It's just, I like it.
Jobs.
I
Where
don't
are these
think you
people
know.
gonna go? And like
It's
Elon
like they
or
took
some of the other
those-
laws keep saying,
those
oh,
power
it's
bars.
very simple. They're gonna go into the private
You
sector.
broke them up
They
in
get
there.
jobs.
I think
Because
you
it's
broke
private
it down.
job. But even, for example, lawyers, right? You know how much I hate that freedom of information office. In one respect, I'm happy that they're getting this shit kicked out of them because they fucking deserve it. But at the other hand,
Are you
they are
gonna be a boy?
dismantling our institutions of
Hey,
government. And any one of you that want to sit there and turn around and say, oh,
Check out this underside feather. Look at that underside feather on his. The tail feather.
Yeah.
You see the one that's like black and white?
Yeah.
Ain't that a trip? All the moms are just yellow.
You are wrong. Again,
Are you, well, I don't know, but
we need to
if he keeps that, that'd be pretty cool. Right, you, he or she. I wanna know.
What do you call it, special elections.
Look at you.
If we can
She is wearing a halo,
we are
huh?
honoring what these
You
people
look like you're wearing a halo. Oh my goodness.
plain and simple. And
Look
that's
at it.
how
What's
we're
that?
gonna
What's
stop
that?
some of this nonsense going on when he has control of the House, the Congress, the
It's a
White
little
House,
better.
and the Supreme Court. You can say all you want, maybe to the guy that gives you a snippet, knock yourself out, but that's not going to end up helping us. It's not going to save this country, and it's not going to provide a future for our children. So Elon Musk, for all you are doing with this bullshit nose, with all of the people that
Yeah.
52,000 so
I
far
hear you.
that have lost their
Yeah.
jobs because you're running out.
We're happy to have you. Yes, we are. How pretty she is. You're pretty, you're a girl. Wow, she is. You are. You know what? Every single one of you is so good.
So very quickly came around to the fact that, okay, you're
That
using
is
this
just going really
box
good.
to create odds to push
Don't worry.
all of this disinformation. And
It's
it
okay.
was very dystopian about what he did on Twitter and then turned it into this way. So now, though, I think we would mock what a Trump administration would look like by saying he's going to run it the same
Looks
way
like
Musk
she's saying,
ran Twitter and
what's he
Instagram
doing?
X.
Not
Those
what's he
issues and
doing,
problems when it relates to X, you can just sign
what's he
off.
doing?
don't have to be on it. You know,
I'm so
and it's just a
concerned.
social media app. It'll be
When
downplays.
you're just
And,
learning.
you can shut it down. When you now bring X, whatever, with less intelligence into federal government, that means you don't have FAA,
Yeah,
that means you don't have national parks that are open. You're not doing research at the CDC and the NIH. That means that you're spreading lies about souls and vaccines. It means that people are dying. It means that there are real world implications. And Elon Musk and folks
There's Daddy.
today, girls need to talk, post a
Look,
bunch of
thank
different
God.
bros or whatever.
Oh, Dad, this on camera. I like to
That's
feel
why
that.
we need to build movement every single day. We're doing it on the minus section, we're doing that
Wow, Jeff. Oh, Dad, this on the camera. What a good dad. That is a big deal on my head. Yeah.
I will, let me, be the person to take the
Yeah,
weight
you water, you gotta wipe your mouth.
about us not doing political beat down hatred. A lot of this is I feel I'm proud of what it means for this community by describing that people having the influence. And you watch it as we are. It has slightly derailed my normal
Turned out to be a winner.
rhythm, if you will, of
Yeah.
getting a piece in all of these things. My days start at
Ex
4,
owner would.
they often end around 11 p.m. And even if something slightly throws it off, I get a little thrown off. So it's my fault why we haven't helped you. I think things are going to start. We're going to make sure we do our Zoom next week, though. So I want to let you know. I think make sure you also subscribe to Maine Over Blue, wherever that's available. For your audio podcast, search Maine Over Blue. Make sure you subscribe to the Michael Coach Show YouTube channel. Let's get that to 1 million subscribers. Thank you all so much for watching. Shout out Brigaders and shout out to my
Boy, these guys from the door was open up.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, right when the sun's going down in the window there. Do you have the fan in here? Or is that the air purifier?
Well, that's the air purifier.
At TJ Maxx, you have more on your closet.
What?
Did you turn them down?
Yeah, they are. Thank you.
What a lovely day. Look at this. Yeah. Look how cute our birds are. Look how sweet you are.
No choice. Great person and an outstanding listener. Excellent integrity is why we're honored to have him on our team. You should put him on your team as well. Find home challenge. The part of experience and knowledge will help you find a perfect home and make it yours. Troy and his team sincerely want to see with the purchase, and they know how to get the job done right. So call the Troy Hansen team for your home purchase. I personally trust and recommend them, and it's the only way to get the T-Date Logan quality back promise as you buy a home. Take care and go Broncos. A major bank is on the verge of collapse, but that's not the real threat. As we're about to see, we're on the brink of a global equity crisis. Stay tuned. I'm your host, Steve Van Meter. Thanks for joining me today. For sure, today the global financial system is under stress.
Want to make a
and
way
results
here?
in liquidity crunch
What
is
that
taking
is?
place throughout the world. But the real question is, can the global
I said, you
financial
want to
system
bet on what bank that
is the
is?
U.S. financial system strong or robust, like the Fed says? Plus,
I don't know.
you're on the brink of meltdown on trade signs and beacon of profit. Stay tuned to the show to find out how
I
subscribers
predict
are big.
Wells Fargo.
Now, just head over to
something connected with, the housing.
Financial system is with all-out liquidity crisis. A check and check that
Oh.
55 billion fresh
Should it be
capital
the
with
Catholic
several big
Church,
banks. The issue isn't that several
bank?
times
What
major
was it
banks
called
are facing
again?
a solvency issue. The issue here is what's going on in
First-
China's economy and its banking
Yeah.
system. I want you to see the parallels of
What's
what
the
goes
name of the
on
one
here in
that's
the
got
US.
the
Because what you're about to find out is the US banking
Bank
system
of
is
America?
not as strong
Bank of
as
America?
that tells us
Catholic
that we
Bank
could
of
be
America.
on the brink of a
What's he
massive
says it's
global
on?
liquidity crisis. As the authorities are looking to inject at least 400 billion yuan, that's
Did he say
55
US
billion in US dollar terms, of fresh capital in the first batch of 3 major banks. The plan, which could be completed as soon as the end of June, is subject to change because the amount for each bank is still being finalized. And the major issue here is they just injected capital in the financial system this week. And immediately what happened is people came out and said, there's still stress in the system, we're still facing a change. So the problem the central bankers have is they keep pumping money in the system, but they don't know how much it needs, because in the case of China, money's flooding out as fast as it shows up. And this is a major problem, because what it tells us is China's economy is headed right into a deflationary spiral. It also tells us what we know is that money is leaving China's country at a fast rate, and there's no sign of it slowing down. The China's banking regulator first flagged its plan to replenish core tier 1 capital to top state lenders back in September. Minister of Finance says they're going to issue special sovereign bonds for these injections, which will strengthen the capability of banks to fend off risk.
Well, we can get the camera right there. This time of day, that is such a pretty picture.
Every time the TV.
Wish we had some decorations on the wall.
The second one is what does stay. The banks are buying bonds. They're buying massive
You know
amounts
what might
of
be
bonds
nice?
because they don't want to
Remember how you see if people put like sticker decorations on the wall? It's like
Now, I want to know from you.
it's like a 9-inch
U.S. banking system is having the
with
liquidity crisis.
whatever design you like on it.
What happened back in March of 2023?
Could I have another one?
Thumbs up at the bottom right of the video. Now, if you believe in the fact that the U.S. banking system is now robust, you're in the comments. I'd love to know why you think that. Because talk about why banks are buying bonds. For good reason, when you head into a stagflationary recession, so you're probably not getting your money back. But let's talk about why the banks are buying bonds. We have to the U.S. data here. If you look at U.S. commercial industrial lending, the shown is blue on a year-over-year rate of change against Treasury and agent securities held at commercial banks. That's shown in red. When we go back to the late 1980s, we see a deceleration of lending that leads to an ultimate contraction. But normally, banks are big buyers of bonds here because in an ideal scenario, they want to lend. That's how they make their money, and then they use the interest that they make off those loans in part to pay on their depositors because they need to have an interest-bearing asset, which a loan is. But when you see lending decelerate and you see deposits increasing, all you need is something, and that's why they turn to Treasury
How
and
much
agency
I got?
securities. This is what China's
It was
making.
only about 7 ounces.
Because they need the interest off those bonds to pay on
You done?
depositors. So let's move forward into the dot-com
That's
bubble,
just
where we see
way too
around
much.
2000. You see that bank lending decelerates and enters a
Keep track
contraction.
of that.
And right at the time you see the bank lending,
You only
what
need
happens
half.
is banks are buying.
Huh?
You only need to have that
You
much.
see it happen right during the global financial
Yeah, that's
crisis. As
just
bank
too
lending
much.
enters a massive contraction. Banks are huge buyers of bonds.
Thank you.
That's where we're at now. Bank lending is just slightly positive, and in response, banks are big buyers of bonds, despite the fact that retail and institutional investors don't want to touch bonds with a 10-foot pole. Banks can't get enough of them because they're worried when things start to go wrong in the economy and people can't pay back their debt, the banks have to eat that loss. So they start buying bonds because they don't want to lend, and in turn, the issue you face here in a debt-based economy is you need banks to lend to create your money. But when they don't lend, money ends up getting destroyed, and next thing you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The banks send the whole financial system right into a crash. Then you get a global liquidity crisis. China could inject as much as $1 trillion more in capital largest bank, but funding coming from bonds. The problem is that may not be enough. In fact, they don't even know if it's going to be enough. But something that should be getting a lot of injection of profits as your trade account. Check out what could be our latest big trade just went on the books a couple of days ago. You can see we gave it to both of our subscribers back here, and a matter of days later, their accounts jumped by 4 to 5%. Now, keep in mind, the market was technically oversold before, but we waited and we told our subscribers to hold off. In fact, if you want to trade and make a big money, like our subscribers are doing, hit the links in the description below. Grab those coupon codes, or stay tuned to the end of the show, and I'll show you exactly how they're doing it. And you can too, because China's liquidity crunch extends even as the PBOC goes cash. And this is something I want to understand is when central bankers start putting money into the banking system, they have no idea what's going on. They don't know how to stop it. Now, we saw the same thing happen back in March of 2023. The Fed came in and put a bunch of money in the banking system, and then they put more money and even more. And eventually, the problem kind of went away. When they were later asked what caused it, they had no answer. They still don't know to this day. So what you're seeing right now is central bankers panicking. Let's take a look why, because we've seen relatively tighter liquidity recently with interbank rates moving higher. And what this means is that banks want to hold on to their money. Because when the financial system was working, the banks will lend to each other without any issue. But when they don't want to lend, it's telling them they want to hold on to cash and capital in a major way because they're facing what could be an entire meltdown of the system. And right now, there's something a lot of people don't want to believe, but you can see it's happening right now in real time in China. But as the reverse repos are a 7-day operation, the impact on markets should be relatively muted. But the issue here is they're still seeing tighter liquidity concerns.
What you looking at, babe?
Cars on cars.com.
What's wrong with this one?
I just got promoted, so I'm looking for something more.
2 million cars for 2 million possibilities. Cars.com. Where to next?
Welcome to Quick Steps, where community comes first. At Quick Steps, we're your universe, and we're here to serve you. We proudly accept Medicaid and offer budget-friendly pricing, ensuring quality eye care for everyone in our community. With the largest selection of frames in Denver, finding the perfect pair has never been easier. Our team of optical experts are dedicated to your vision, providing personalized plans and glasses to ensure a clear future. And for those in a hurry, enjoy the convenience of same-day glasses. Quick Steps, where quality meets community. Visit us today and see the difference.
What are you not telling me?
Concerns.
Building your online business.
Liquidity conditions remain tight after the central bank's cash injection. So again, despite the fact that the central bank put all this money into the system, it had absolutely no effect. So what we're seeing here is China's economy headed to a stagflationary recession. The banks melting down. We're seeing money flood out of the country in a big way, despite tens and hundreds of billions of dollars, potentially even $1 trillion worth of yuan going into the Chinese banking system. Nothing seems to stop it. And there's good reason why, because when you look at the bank's perspective, they don't want to lend because they're afraid they're not going to get their money back. But how about businesses? Well, they don't need to borrow because they're not looking at expansion. And consumers, they're worried about the job market. In fact, once again, we're going to look to the U.S. data here where we see very similar parallels because U.S. initial jobless claims at the highest since 2025 as DC layoffs jumped. And new applications rose 242,000 last week, which indicates a major problem. We're seeing initial claims start to head higher. Now, we warned about this. We said, where continued claims go, initial claims eventually fall because if people get stuck on unemployment for extended periods of time, their spending power decreases and eventually it backfeeds into the economy. We're starting to see that now. But if you think those claims are from fired federal workers, well, they're generally not included in the overall initial claims number. But let's take a look because the demand for workers is moderated, although layoffs at a national level remain relatively subdued. Continuing claim the proxy for the number of people receiving benefits decreased to 1.86 billion in the week ending February 15th. So you can see the parallels between what's going on in China and the U.S. In China, the factories aren't running at full tilt as a global economy slowing. They have no need to borrow because they don't need to expand. Consumers don't need to borrow because they don't see any reason they're going to be able to pay these loans back. They're worried about their job. And what's happening with the banks? They're buying bonds and getting massive cash injections from the central bank. Let's look at what's happening in the U.S. You see the labor market slowing down. What does that mean? Consumers don't want to borrow. Of course, banks don't want to lend because they're not sure they're going to get their money back. Businesses, well, we already know it. They don't need to expand because demand continues to fall. Now, we do see initial claims jump by 22,000. That's on a seasonally adjusted basis. But you'll note the continued claims only go by 5,000 on a seasonally adjusted basis, 20,000 on a non-seasonally adjusted basis. And the issue here is continued claims on a non-seasonally adjusted basis remain at 2.1 million. Remember, we said that 2 million was the inflection point. Once we got there, things would eventually spiral out of control. Sure enough, what do we see now? Initial claims following continued claims higher, just as we said what happened. Let's go back into the late 1980s, and what do we see? Continued claims in blue heads up, and initial claims in red follows. And you see this relationship as continued claims go higher, initial claims follow each and every time. Because again, those people that are on unemployment for extended periods of time, but you find out is their loss of spending in the economy affects other people's jobs, other people's incomes. It was only a matter of time now before we started to see initial claims rise, and with, of course, the federal government cutting spending, we could see that number go up even more. But what is the issue here? Why don't the banks want to lend in this environment, despite the fact that the PBOC is injecting cash? But again, it comes back to the fact that they don't know if they're going to get their money back. So when banks are uncertain, they don't lend. And again, it all comes back to the economy, all back to the labor market. As we look at continued claims and move against the delinquency rate on credit cards, here again, U.S. data, and we can see right around 1995, continued claims tick up. But it wasn't the fact that they ticked up a little bit, it was that delinquency rates rose. And of course, that puts a big freeze to banks, because when they see delinquency rates rising, they realize people aren't going to be able to pay those loans back. They don't want to extend new loans into the economy. That means new money isn't being created. And the risk is when we get a contraction of lending, money is destroyed. And then immediately following, you'll notice the delinquency rate rises from an already elevated level. So despite the fact the economy turned around and continued claims fell between 1996 and 2000, it didn't really impact the broad economy as much as it needed to. Let's move forward to late 2007. We see continued claims head higher, but back in 2005, delinquency rates started to rise, and then they skyrocketed. And now look where we're at. We see that as the labor market gets weaker and continued claims sit around 2.1 million non-seasonally adjusted, we know that delinquency rates have risen. What does that tell us about U.S. commercial banks? That they're in the same situation as China, but just not at the same point. They're facing the fact that the U.S. economy is slowing down, that the labor market is weakening, and that people cannot pay their loans back. They're going into delinquency. If you're a lender, this is a major red flag, and you can cut back on your lending operations. Eventually, this sends us right into a recession. Let's take a look at the relationship between the delinquency rate and credit cards and the bank's decision to buy bonds. You'll look back here right around 1994 to 1995, the delinquency rate starts to head higher. Shortly thereafter, the banks sense the urgency of what's coming. They start to buy bonds. And once again, right around 2001, the delinquency rate ticks up. Banks are buying bonds. You see it happens in 2008. At first, they can ignore the rising delinquency rate because the economy is booming. The next thing you know, the banks buy a ton of bonds. And then we see it happening now. While again, retail institutional investors are shutting bonds in a big way, banks are quietly snapping up a ton of them. Because again, delinquency rates are rising. They're worried about the banking system. And why do banks buy bonds? Well, it's not just to pay interest on depositors. It's because when liquidity crisis hit, they need something that's very liquid they can sell. Of course, they know. But lots of people buy treasuries when that happens. Particularly people who are looking to sell their equity to buy bonds for safety. The banks load up early. They're the smart money in this case. We see banks buying bonds. It's not a good sign. There's another stress that will impact the U.S. as well. That's the dollar, as it now is soaring higher as Trump affirms and marks tariffs for Canada and Mexico that many thought weren't going to happen are. And the Bloomberg dollar spot index jumped 0.5%, the largest jump in 3 weeks after Trump cited a March 4th implementation date on a social media post. You think about this from the consumer perspective, they're already under stress. They're already seeing the delinquency rate rise because they don't have enough money to pay all their bills. And now what's going to happen? Prices are likely to go higher, but that suggests it's the delinquency rate to go higher. Next thing you know, the U.S. banks are going to be right behind China. Trump says Canada and Mexico tariffs to take effect. And then he even adds a new duty on China. So you think about why China's economy is floundering, why the banks are seeing money flood out. It's not just because their currency is weakening and money wants to leave the country to find a safer place. It's not just because their economy is slowing down. It's because more tariffs could be the nail in China's coffin. What you're seeing is the banking system cannot survive under the situation. But the bigger issue is that the Chinese banking system is interconnected with the rest of the world. If their banks start to fail because the PBOC can't keep enough cash in the system, watch it spread rapidly to the rest of the world. And President Donald Trump said 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico are on track to go into place on March 4th. He would impose an additional 10% tax on Chinese imports. And Trump said on Thursday in social media posts that drugs from countries North American neighbors are still entering very high and unacceptable levels, and therefore tariffs are coming. And that means U.S. consumer prices are going to go even higher. And so you think about the effects of the U.S. economy, where again, we're already seeing people unable to pay their bills. We're seeing people get stuck on unemployment. But if prices go up, that means people have less money to spend in the discretionary side of the economy. It's going to lead to even more people losing their job. The April 2nd reciprocal trade tariff date will remain in full force and effect, suggesting that this is only the beginning. There are more tariffs coming, not just in March, but more in April. Prices again likely to go up, but we can see the early signs of how this is impacting the U.S. economy. We see prices rising, we see labor market weakening. You can tell exactly where we're headed. That is into stagflation. For the banks, it's the worst possible scenario. Because I mean, lots of people go into default, and that means, of course, banks are going to be buying tons of bonds. The Fed is going to be falling with the PBOC guys, injecting massive liquidity. We can see the effects of higher prices heading into prior recessions. We look at consumer prices that's shown in blue against real retail sales that's shown in red, both on a year-over-year rate change. And we can see when the consumer price index sets higher starting in late 1998 into the dot-com bubble, it has a massive impact on retail sales. And why is that? Because consumers couldn't afford higher prices, so they had to cut back their spending. And again, that back goes right into the labor market, and then it impacts the banks. So you can see rising prices starting in 2006 into the global financial crisis, and look at the impact it had on real retail sales. They were already hovering at near zero levels, slowed down further and entered a major contraction. And now look, retailers desperate to see a turnaround. What are we hearing from companies like Walmart? They're saying things aren't getting better. Consumers are getting cash strapped. Here we can see real retail sales looking to roll over and head down as prices head higher. So you can see this from the bank's perspective. Why do they want to buy bonds? This economy is going the wrong direction. So you can see liquidity crunch is not just going to happen in China. It's going to happen here in the U.S. It's going to happen in Europe as people demand the money in a big way. And what the problem is, the system doesn't have the money to cover it. Let's take a look at the consumer price index now against average weekly hours production non-supervisory employees. You can see very clearly why retail sales fell going into every recession. It's very simple. As prices went up, income actually went down. While wage growth remained elevated, hours worked declined. Workers had less money. They had no choice but to spend less, and that left other workers on the unemployment line. You see it happen once again right here in 2000. Hours were plunged into rising prices in recession. However, in 2007, hours worked rolled over, headed down against rising energy prices, right into a financial crisis. Look at now. We see hours worked plunging. We're at a critical level here. We see prices set to go high, perhaps a lot higher than most people think due to the incoming tariff. We'll see if they actually get on the board or not. If maybe this economy is in a tight place. President Trump will back off. We'll find out, because here is what is coming. And this is why the banks are panicking, why they're buying bonds, why we could face a liquidity crisis all over the world. As we look at the consumer price index now against continued unemployment claims, and my friends, this is the recipe for stagflation. You get rising prices and rising continued claims, and you get a recession each and every time. You see the 91 recession, you see the dot-com bubble, you see the global financial crisis, and now you see what's coming next. Prices going up, continued claims likely to head higher. And you can see there's virtually no answer. The only thing that banks can do at this point is buy bonds, and that is possibly the worst thing that banks can do. Because we need them to create money. Money leads to, of course, economic growth. But when they start backing off, as you're seeing in China, your next thing you know, there's going to be massive amounts of liquidity injected into the system. For some reason, are going to disappear and head into the next financial crisis. But you don't have to worry about what's going to happen to your money, because trades are working and in a big way. We trade these machines and we trade momentum. You see, we got an 80% win rate. This was yesterday. I want to show you that we closed out a bunch of trades as we headed into a down market. Because not only did we show our subscribers how to make money trading, show them how to control their risk to the downside. Heading into today's trade, we have an 80% and 100% win rate on both of our reports. And here's our next big trade that all of our subscribers are in on. You can see momentum bond, but we told them this wasn't the time, there wasn't confirmation trade. We told them to buy right here, and next thing you know, a couple days later, they're up 4 to 5%, depending on what day they bought in. And this is huge. Because how do we do it? How do we control risk and yet find a trade opportunity? Well, there's two ways we do it. One, we look at machine positioning every day. That's called our CTA time control. But what are we looking for is when machines need these big buyers, we position our subscribers ahead of that. Now, here's the best part. In the notes, we tell you exactly what trades to take. You don't even have to read the report. But then you trade momentum. And you find out you're getting in late, out early, struggling with a signal. Well, we run a proprietary overlay because of the trade momentum. It's not just about the signal, it's about the trend. When you blend them together, you get an amazing trade. But again, you don't even have to read the report. You get the notes each and every day. But these are the trades to take and the risk control level. You get the report, you get the signals. I go through and tell you the trade you should take. We back test the reports. We know they work. We give you full risk control levels at 30 days. And believe it or not, even disclose how time trades my order. Once you follow along right with me and grab those links in your system and those coupon codes for a 30-day free trial, because we're that confident you can make money trading our report. But we don't want you to pay for the first month. When that is in a meter, thanks for watching. Thanks for being there. Bye now.
Conservation Alliance is an experience. Wild, a celebration of wildlife, colorful light like never before. Celebrate the beauty of wildlife in a whole new light. Tickets on sale now.
What do you know about Cairo? There's a lot going on.
And this one run I was impressed. 100%. Then I was game. I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. That's a work of art.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we've all seen the images from these viral town halls across the country where Republican constituents are coming into Republican town halls to yell at their Republican elected officials for not kind of asserting their own authority against Donald Trump and Elon Musk and their overreach. Well, we have news now, and I'll put this right here on the screen, that Republican Party leaders are suggesting that if lawmakers feel the need to hold such events, they do teletown halls or at least vet attendees to avoid scenes that become viral clips, according to Republican sources. And so if they must feel the desire to hold these town halls and to actually face the voters, that they take steps to protect themselves. What is your reaction to this in light of what we've seen across the country?
I mean, this is more of the same cowardice that we see from Republicans day in and day out. Part of me thinks that their strategy is like the weather, like don't turn on the weather channel, right? Like, how does it not happen? Right? The problem that Republicans have right now is not the mode of communicating with their voters. The problem Republicans have right now is that their own voters understand that they are being betrayed by Donald Trump and his administration. They understand that what Elon Musk is doing threatens jobs in their communities, threatens services that they rely upon, and most importantly, as you point out, they recognize that the Republicans in the House are completely spineless. They are beyond spineless. You know, they're like a puppet. You know, they're they don't even have form. They're just like some liquid on the floor. Step in, they just shoot this little wet, but then he just walks on by.
I made the analogy the other day on one of my videos that these people are so spineless is the equivalent of a baby deer in the middle of a 6-lane highway.
That is giving them, you know, baby deer at least have like bone structure, they're able to propel themselves on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, Like, that is being way too kind to the Republicans. And so now what they're doing is they are figuring out how to hide from their voters. And I wanna emphasize one of those things. These are not just Republicans in swing districts. This is not like Republicans in a, like Brian Fitzpatrick, who has a very swing district, who is, worried about that. These are Republicans in solidly Republican districts being confronted by Republican voters. And so they've got a real problem. And hiding from the voters is not gonna make that better.
I think one of these town halls is a plus 23 Republican district, that's Mark Alford, an R plus 23 district. So to your exact point, these districts are heavily Republican. These are, we've said this before, these are not places where they're organizing district-wide BLM protests. These are districts that have been solidly Republican in many cases for decades. I know McCormick's district, for example, another R plus 22 district, I believe, has been Republican for 67 years. And yet these people are coming out to push back. And if I had to equate this to anything, it looks a hell of a lot like what we saw in 2018, where Republicans were trying to strip away the ACA, and we saw, even in these red districts, these voters come out and start to begin pushing back on their Republican officials who decided that they would operate independent of what their voters actually wanted.
Yeah, and this is actually, I think, quite a good work. First of all, because, we are in presumably the honeymoon period of the Trump administration. Right. Like, this is a period of time when presidents are usually super popular and their agenda is the most popular thing. Like, this is the giving away the goodies part of the program.
So are you suggesting that trying to cut Medicaid, which has over 85% support in the United States, it doesn't exactly bode good for the rest of the administration?
Right, exactly. Right. I mean, so that's number one. Number two is you mentioned Medicaid, and in this sense, it's like the issue that the voters understand the truth. Like, there's not like a sales job. It's not like the voters don't know what cutting Medicaid would mean for them and their communities. It's not like this can be spun. This is wildly unpopular. And Donald Trump has set up a dynamic to make actually Congress the bad guys. Like, the Republicans here have actually been set up by their own president, because Donald Trump continues to say, I'm not in favor of cutting Medicaid. I'm not in favor of cutting all these programs. And he's leading it, like food stamps, right? And so he's leading the Republicans to be the bad guys when these budget proposals are being put forward. And that, I think, it means that Donald Trump is not planning on walking the plank, proverbially, at the end of this politically, when Republicans become unpopular. I suspect Donald Trump is going to say, well, not me. I don't know why they were doing that. I mean, I'm not.
But we push back on one thing, that is this idea that they're not going to try to spin it, because already we've begun to see the sprouts of what they hope will germinate into their full-blown defense, and that is this idea that all of this is warranted, necessary, and justified because they're just rooting out fraud. And so we know that they're going to try to cut $880 billion at least, and that's important too, because we know as part of the budget blueprint that it was at least $880 billion from the E&C committee. We know there was at least $230 billion from the Ad Committee, which of course oversees food stamps. And so we already know the beginnings of what they're going to try to use as their defense, and that's the idea that they're just going to try to root out fraud. And so what is your reaction as we see a situation unfolding right now where they're going to make these cuts? It's going to impact regular people, but they're going to basically cosplay as just rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, even if they have to pretend that all $880 billion is just going to be fraud.
Yeah, again, this isn't going to work because it's going to impact real people.
Correct.
Like, this is the thing, is you can play the waste, fraud, and abuse game as long as you are not actually affecting services, right? So you can say, look, I'm going to cut taxes and it'll be paid for with cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Then you don't actually cut anything, the deficit goes up, and people sort of are theoretically impacted by that, but not practically. Here, the problem is they're actually going to cut these programs, and cutting these programs will have real world impact for their voters. And what's ironic, Brian, and sadly ironic, I take no pleasure in this, but as you know, Brian, this is actually gonna hurt Republican districts worse than it will hurt most Democratic districts. So, like, the people who are gonna be hurt the most are the people in these districts, and they are not gonna be able to spun out of believing that they have been hurt, when in fact they have been hurt.
Although that's not gonna stop Republicans from trying. We've seen the advantages that are conferred onto the GOP by virtue of their hermetically sealed media ecosystem. So, I would be floored. You could knock me over with a gust of wind if we actually see any of those real life stories break through when you're watching Fox News or Newsmax or OAN or being featured on, Dan Bongino's show, which if he continues it while he's prosecuting media figures of the FBI.
Or why give up?
Why give up now? That's right. After all, most of these people are getting into government to try to get successful shows. So if you've already got one, why stop now? But I would be floored if we see any of these actual stories actually break through on right-wing media. But it will break through in the rest of the media ecosystem, and it's going to be increasingly difficult to insulate this stuff. Medicaid impacts over 85 million people. Food stamps impact over 40 million people in this country. If you think that just by virtue of leaning on the insulation of right-wing media that you're going to be able to evade accountability for this stuff, I think Republicans are in for a rude awakening here.
Yeah,
America's best tire warranty. It's included with every set of tires, only at Les Schwab.
One of my favorite fruits. They don't come off. They're only around for a short season.
but you're kind of more of an expert in this than I am. But it's hard for me to know if the Republican members of Congress are framed up or they are not. I mean, one of the things that makes me very surprised that they're being told that these cuts are real and that these things are taking place and so on. And what I can't tell is if that's because, like, it's not what they are hearing on Congress, it's not what they are being told, or whether they actually know better because, like, they're members of Congress and they actually should be knowing better if they have staff to tell them, and that it's all kind of the usual game of, oh, geez, I haven't heard that isn't true. Like, do you have a sense, are these congressmen completely out of touch, or is it just a cynical point?
Cynical point to the nth degree. These people know full well exactly what they're doing, and they built it this way. So basically, the point that they're perpetuating here is that all of them are saying, well, this budget doesn't cut Medicare, this budget doesn't cut food stamps. How dare, pull out the fainting couch. How dare anybody in the liberal media or on the left say that this is going to cut Medicaid and food stamps? That's not what I'm voting for. I would never. But they know full well that the budget blueprint actually seeks to eliminate that funding from the community. So if you're taking $880 billion out of energy and commerce, for example, if you're taking $230 billion out of ag, the only mathematical way to eliminate that amount of funding is to cut Medicaid out of PNC, food stamps out of ag. That's the only way to do it. And so they have this layer of protection where they can say, well, I wouldn't put my name on anything that specifically cuts Medicaid. I wouldn't put my name on anything that specifically cuts food stamps, but I'm perfectly content to just mandate cuts to these certain committees where the only way they can actually enact those cuts is to cut the programs that they are pretending they wouldn't dare touch. And so it's just a cynical point. They don't know full well exactly what they're doing. They're playing these gymnastics. The rubber's going to hit the road when, after this blueprint is done and they actually have to go through and make these cuts. That's going to be the difficult part. Because now that they've passed this budget resolution blueprint by a vote of 276 to 15, the next part is actually going to be to go through in each of these committees and say, okay, here's where the $880 billion is going to be cut from ENC. Here's where $230 billion is cut.
Right, and that's why I said I think that this is where Trump is going. Because Trump is not, at the end of the day, going to be like, yes, I agree to cut Medicaid. He is going to say,
This is the budget they said?
correct, and he's going to say Congress. That's 100% right. He will say Congress did it and I made it better. It would have been worse. I used my power to protect people, and he's not going to stand by this and say that it was his doing or his OMB's doing or his ag department's doing, or, Kenny's doing, he's gonna say, oh, that was just Congress. And as usual, the Republicans in Congress will be a total doormat. They will just, they'll just take it, because like I said, they're just kind of appalled.
One thing that I think is especially insidious in all of this is that they're targeting Medicaid, but they're not expressly, or at least right now, targeting Medicare. And I think that the reason that they're doing that is because they know that folks who are recipients of Medicare are a voting bloc that votes consistently, that has a lot of political power. The voting bloc that are recipients of Medicaid, we're talking about disabled folks, we're talking about children, tens of millions of people, kids in the Children's Health Insurance Program, even in food stamps, there's 40 some odd million Americans that receive food stamps. This is not a reliable voting bloc. These are not folks who have or exercise a ton of political power. And so they had their goal of trying to strip away healthcare or lifelines that folks need, because they need to find some way what they're going to need for tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. And so knowing that they wanted to do that, they had to do it with the least political consequences for themselves. And so they found the most vulnerable Americans who rely on food stamps and Medicaid to be able to survive. Well, we know that we're not really going to get punished as much as we would if we targeted, overtly targeted Social Security or Medicare, but we can get by slashing benefits for food stamps and Medicaid, because those people don't exert as much political power as the other groups do.
Right. And setting aside the complete immorality, like setting aside the absolute heartlessness, it's not going to work, at least not for that. Like here's the thing: is that is a very Machiavellian, very immoral strategy if you are running for president. Maybe even in some Senate races that will. But in these House districts, the midterm elections, where you have a House that's only divided by a single seat, right? Like it is enough of a constituency, it is enough to switch enough momentum in enough races to flip control of the House.
There are some of these districts that are run by Republican members of Congress who have as much as a quarter to a third of Medicaid recipients.
Right. So it is an insane thing for the House Republicans. Like even just for their own narrow interest, it may be that it isn't enough to affect, like I said, who's the president, who has presidency, like college, or even control the Senate. Though I think there are other problems Republicans have in the Senate. But when you look at how close the House is divided and where these recipients fall, boy, I mean, it's almost like they're just like, okay, like if Donald Trump wants us to give up control of the House, we're going to give up control of the House. And again, the primary lens of this is not a political lens, it's through what is right for the American people. And to bring us back to where we started, these folks are hiding from their constituents. They are hiding from the people who they were sent to Washington, D.C. to represent. They are hiding from the people who are the most vulnerable, who rely on these programs, and who, as you point out, these elected officials know they are screwing up. And yet they are doing it anyway because they are so spineless, they are such cowards that they do whatever they have to please Donald Trump.
Right, to their own detriment at the end of the day. Well, look, that spinelessness stands in stark contrast to the fearless journalism that you and your team are doing at Democracy Docket. Highly recommend for anybody watching it now to want to support good, strong, independent media, and also support Mark and his team for all the work that they do to protect democracy across the country. Please sign up for Democracy Docket from the link right here on the screen, and also in the post description of this video. It's an amazing resource for you on a daily basis, and you will not regret it. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen. I'm Michael Lyons. This is Democracy Watch.
Yeah.
My acting teacher from Ida Thor told us to be a good actor, you have to be a good talker. And I know my brother.
Good job.
So, maybe I'll be famous.
How much will you pay to soothe a sore throat at Redmond's, Harris Teeter, Market Basket, Stop and Shop, Ice Chopper, Food Town, Ingles, Roche Brothers, Woodman's, Big Y, and Meyer.
Our new modern rating structure looks at more than 100 factors, so you'll get the coverage you need without without overpaying for things you don't. Be confident in your coverage with our wide variety of options at competitive rates. We're by your side. That's the Farm Bureau Insurance promise.
Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We turn now to someone who has a deep understanding of the stakes of the Trump administration's assault on education and history. In his latest book, Yale University philosophy professor Jason Stanley details how educational institutions and the teaching of history have become key battlegrounds in authoritarian countries as the Trump administration, through a dizzying series of executive orders and actions, attempts to dismantle higher education in the United States by redefining discrimination in schools, fighting so-called woke ideology, attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, gutting the Department of Education, and threatening funding for research and higher education. We're joined here in New York by Jason Stanley, professor of philosophy at Yale. His latest book, Erasing History, How Fascists Rewrite the Past to Control the Future. Also author of How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them. Welcome back to Democracy Now! I mean, since your books, you've been writing a lot, and you've been speaking a lot on these issues. If you can take on what's happening right now to the major threat to higher education, whether we're talking about the freeze of funding for pediatric cancer research throughout the United States and some of the most elite scientific departments at universities, or whether we're talking about erasing DEI. Give us the context for this.
Liberal arts colleges in authoritarian countries. Authoritarianism, you have to target colleges and universities education.
Jeff,
As
can you hear me?
recently said.
Can you hear me, Jeff?
To be clear, the United States has the greatest system of higher education. Everyone in the world who can sends their kids to our colleges and universities if they can be accepted to those universities. Every professor in the world would leave their university if their personal situation would allow to come to a U.S. university if they got an offer. What the Trump administration is trying to do is take this system down. They have various reasons for taking, they have various excuses, not reasons. They say universities are packed with Democrats. Well, look, math and physics departments are packed with Democrats. The vast majority of mathematicians and physicists are, in fact, not Trump supporters. So the idea is presumably to stock your local physics department, to stock the top medical schools with Trump supporters just because they're Trump supporters. This takes down the United States as a leading research place. It takes down one of the things that we do unquestionably the best in the world, which is higher ed.
Talk about how exactly you see history being rewritten by the current administration and the impacts it has in your university and other.
Right. So they're targeting, they say they're targeting critical race theory. Critical race theory is the study of the practices that keep racial inequalities present, that are hangovers from Jim Crow. The institution.
Yes, I need to.
For example,
I need to get the nightlight.
Mortgage redlining, school segregation, housing segregation, policing practices that were formed when cities were intentionally segregated. So they're targeting Black history. They're targeting minority history. They're trying to replace it explicitly with patriotic education. Now, just imagine your cartoon vision of an authoritarian country. Imagine 1984. It's a country, the George Orwell's book. It's a country where students pledge allegiance to the flag every day. It's a country where instead of knowledge and learning, they're taught to be, they're indoctrinated. Now, this will be done supposedly under the banner of classical education. The idea is we're going to restore classical education to end wokeness. But let's look at classical education. Classical education is an education that is whose foundational elements are the works of the ancient philosophers, an ancient history like Thucydides, Plato, and Aristotle. Plato advocated removing children from their family at birth. In Plato's Symposium, it's normal to have relations with older male professors and their younger male students. So the idea that classical education is there to promote Christianity and the nuclear family is simply just delusional. And it's, as usual with this attack on schools and higher education, it's merely an ideological facade for replacing critical inquiry between, saluting the flag.
So, talk about this moment.
I'm talking to Jade.
You're both a German citizen and a U.S. citizen, son of Holocaust survivors. You don't throw around these words, fascism, Nazism, easily. You know exactly the effects. We're moving into a weekend and election in Germany. If you can talk about Vice President J.D. Vance recently meeting with the far-right party Alternative for Germany, AfD leader Alice Weidel. Billionaire Elon Musk sent a message to the AfD's election campaign launch party back in January, which he says there is too much of a focus on past guilt. I want to play that.
Education goes back thousands of years. As even you should sort of read Julius Caesar's account of first encountering the German tribes in the Gaulle campaigns, and he was like, "Wow, it's very impressive. These are very, very powerful warriors." So, I think there's frankly too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that. Children should not be guilty of the sins of their parents, or even let alone their parents, their great grandparents, maybe.
So that's Elon Musk addressing the AfD on a huge video screen. And of course, as we just said, Vance just met with the AfD leader. The election is Sunday. Talk about the significance of this.
So in discussions of, for example, Black education, Germany is held up as a model of facing its past. And Germany's sort of democracy has been based upon this education system of facing the past. That was always somewhat fictional. We have to remember that 80 years ago, Germany, we're talking about 80 years ago. We're not talking about the 19th century. So Germany had various ways of facing its past and various ways of evading facing its past. But across the world, it was taken as a model. So if you take down Germany's education system, then you take down the world model for doing this. Now let's be clear. German people of my generation, their grandparents were Nazis. We know now that the Wehrmacht, the German soldiers who fought the ordinary Germans, we know now through research that they participated in mass slaughter. 7 of my great-uncles were murdered by the Wehrmacht, and all of their children, my mother and her sister, are the only survivors of their family, of their generation. So this education, flawed as it was, is being targeted now. AfD is running on a platform of glorifying German soldiers in World War I and World War II. That comment of Musk, the German nations were great fighters, that links into AfD's rhetoric and propaganda of erasing the past, saying, well, we should be proud of our German soldiers in World War I and World War II. Now, this was always going to be the case. If you attack Black history in the United States, if you blur the history of slavery, if you say that slavery was part of what made America great, we don't need to be ashamed of it, that is, of course, going to result in the erasure of Jewish history in Germany. And, you know, Jewish Americans, my fellow Jewish Americans who supported this in the case of Black history, erasing Black history, this is just coming back to bite them. Musk is not American. He's not from America. He has no commitment to Holocaust history being remembered. This kind of facing your past, as Germany shows, is essential to democracy. It's essential to German democracy.
The Nazi Party was founded in Munich 100 years ago this week, on February 27, 1925. Adolf Hitler just delivered a speech to 3,000 people in a Munich beer hall just out of prison for his role in a failed coup. He was relaunching the party and cementing his role as its unquestioned leader. But also, Christian world. democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth visiting Guantanamo Bay in his first visit to the notorious naval base since he was confirmed, and amidst growing criticism of the transfer and detention of migrants there. On Monday, the Trump administration halted plans to house detained migrants in tent structures at Guantanamo over concerns the facilities don't meet detention standards set by ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The tents lack electricity and air conditioning. Earlier this month, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem visited Guantanamo days after the first detained immigrants were flown there and claimed without evidence that people deported there were dangerous criminals. These individuals are the worst of the worst that we pulled off of our streets. Who are they? Murderers, rapists. So when I was there, I was able to watch one of the flights landing and then unload about 15 different of these criminals. Those were mainly child pedophiles, those that were out there trafficking children, trafficking drugs, and were pulled off of our streets and put at this facility. So that was Kristi Noem, now the head of the Department of Homeland Security. The New York Times just had an expose on a woman in Colombia who's Venezuelan who saw her brother in video coming to Guantanamo. And she said, my brother is not a dangerous criminal. He came into the United States. The administration talked about the tattoos that these people are members of gangs. And she said, his tattoos are of Michael Jordan because he loves Michael Jordan. Well, last week, as the Trump administration abruptly deported 177 Venezuelan migrants who've been detained at Guantanamo, they admitted that 50 of them had no criminal record apart from entering the U.S. unlawfully. Meanwhile, 5 Senate Democrats, led by Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, sent a letter to President Trump Monday challenging the transfer of migrants to Guantanamo as illegal and unjustified, calling the move, quote, unprecedented, unlawful, and harmful to American national security values and interests, the letter says. It goes on, there's no basis in U.S. immigration law for transferring non-citizens arrested inside the United States to a location outside the United States for detention prior to or for the purpose of conducting removal proceedings. Unquote. Investigation reveals how the private corporation running the migrant detention center at other migrant detention facilities in the United States. It has over 40 subsidiaries and more than. Last year, the Biden administration awarded a contract to run the Guantanamo subsidiary. We're joined here in New York by investigative reporter Guardian is headlined "Revealed: U.S. firm running Guantanamo migrant jail accused over rights abuses." Jose, it's great to have you with us. Lay out what you found.
Thank you so much, Amy. Yes, so obviously the Guantanamo Naval Base has a long history, and it's notorious for the military prison that has housed war on terror detainees. There's been allegations of torture and abuse there. But what really the public didn't know too much prior to Trump's executive order is that for decades there existed a migrant detention center at the Guantanamo Naval Base. Now, this facility is divided into two. One part of it is run by the State Department, and the other part of it is run by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE, what I found is that last year, the Biden administration gave the ICE contract to Acoma Infrastructure Protection, which is this massive federal government contract. This contract is worth $163.4 million to run the Migrant Operations Center, which is what it's called. Technically, it is at the naval base, so it's extremely secretive. We don't know how operations take place, what the conditions are like for migrants there. What's important to note is that for decades, this facility has been used to detain migrants, primarily those who are fleeing from the Caribbean, trying to make it to the U.S. and are intercepted at sea by the Coast Guard. Now, when they're intercepted at sea, they're sent to the Migrant Operations Center, where they are held and detained and processed, and sometimes either deported back to their home countries or repatriated to third nations. However, what I found in this investigation is that for decades, since the early 2000s, since the Bush administration, private contractors have been running this detention center. First, it started with Geo Group, one of the biggest private companies in the U.S. Then it moved to MBM Incorporated, which is a defense contractor. And now last year, the Biden administration gave Acoma this massive contract to run this facility for 5 years. What is also important to note here is that because it's on the naval base, it is extremely secretive. So we didn't know that throughout various presidential administrations, from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, and now under Trump again, migrants have been held at this ICE facility that is at Guantanamo. There's been no public oversight over the facility. There haven't been any public reports, even though they're congressionally mandated by members of Congress to publish reports about the conditions in the facility. But what I also found is that this company, Acoma Infrastructure Protection, is part of a larger conglomerate called Acoma. And Actima has over 40 subsidiaries. It's a massive, massive company that contracts with the government. And this company also runs other immigration, customs, and enforcement facilities throughout the U.S. I was able to find at least 5 of them, and 3 of them were, really rightly criticized for the conditions inside and for the treatment of migrants around the U.S.
And Jose, who runs this company, and how did it manage to gather so many federal contracts? You talk a little bit about its history and the personalities involved with them that you found.
Absolutely. So the history of Actima is actually quite fascinating. It's a member of the Non-Regional Corporation, which is an Alaskan Native corporation. Now, Alaskan Native corporations were created in the 70s. They were created sort of in response to protests and social movements in order for the federal government to grant indigenous people in Alaska federal contracts and just more opportunities, within their communities. So the Non-Regional Corporation, it is owned by primarily indigenous people in Alaska. It's an Alaskan Native corporation, so all of the shares, everything is owned by Native Alaskan people. But within the Non-Regional Corporation is Actima, and within Actima is these 40, different subsidiaries. And these 40 different subsidiaries have dozens upon dozens upon dozens of federal government contracts. They work with dozens of federal agencies. They work with the Department of Defense. They work with the Department of Interior. They work with ICE. I found one instance in which Actima, one of Actima's subsidiaries, was hired to do maintenance of helicopters in Saudi Arabia for the military, but also to train Saudi military forces. Just different IT services, infrastructure. So it's a massive federal government contractor. However, because it is an Alaskan Native corporation, the shares for the company can't be traded and can't be sold. So it's able to sort of escape any sort of regulation from the Securities and Exchange Commission. But because of its status as an Alaskan Native corporation, and because of the 40 subsidiaries that Actima has, it's able to very quickly get contracts that are supposed to be allocated from the federal government to small businesses. So there's actually a small business that is minority owned, and that's how they're able to sort of get these over 2,000 federal contracts.
And talking again about the Guantanamo Detention Center, what's the situation in terms of detainees, immigrant detainees there, and their access to lawyers?
Yeah, so the access to lawyers is extremely limited. And this has been ongoing, for decades that the Migrant Detention Center has existed at the Guantanamo naval base. Now, what's important to note is that the Migrant Operations Center, which is what it's called, is separate from the military prison. But what we do understand from the Trump administration's actions is that migrants who were detained in the U.S. and then sent to Guantanamo for further detention, they were housed both at the military installations, the military prison, and at the Migrant Operations Center. Now, this Migrant Operations Center is divided into 2 sections. One section is run by ICE, one is run by the State Department, but we just don't know exactly how many people are detained there because the lack of transparency that, again, spans decades and spans various presidential administrations. I think what's important to note here is that because it is at the naval base, it's in Cuba, right? So migrants who historically primarily have fled from the Caribbean have been intercepted at sea and have been sent to the Guantanamo facilities for further processing. But we just don't know how many have been sent there. Some estimates that I saw in some of the government contracting records show that between 2021 and 2024, there have been between 4 and 40 migrants who have been detained there. But this Migrant Operations Center, what is interesting about it and what I found with the federal government contracting records is that it has the capacity to hold 120 migrants, 120 people, but ICE requires the contractor to be able to expand the facility with intensity to detain up to 400 migrants. There's a lot of unanswered questions here. There's a lack of transparency. We don't know what the conditions are like. And because migrants historically who have been detained there have either been deported to their home countries or sent to a third country, we don't hear too much about from the migrants themselves who have been detained there because they primarily really haven't been brought to the U.S.
And would these migrants sent to Guantanamo be counted under deportees because this is area controlled by the U.S. and Cuba? So they're just being sent there, not deported?
Correct. Yeah, so they're still under the custody of ICE and the Department of
And
Defense.
final question, and we just have about a minute. The human rights abuses that Acoma has been found guilty.
That's right. So three different facilities have faced severe criticism. There is one facility in Florida called the North Chrome Processing Center, which is owned by Acoma. And the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Inspector General, did a federal audit at the facility and found various instances of inappropriate use of force, including one case that I found in which guards at this facility opened the slots to the solitary confinement door of a man who was detained there and pepper sprayed him, despite him showing no resistance or threat to anybody else. There's also a lawsuit for forced labor at the Buffalo Detention Center in upstate New York. And there's also been criticism of one of the solitary confinement units in Texas that it runs.
And finally, 30 seconds, you wrote a piece for Drop Site. Biden gave Trump the blueprint to lock up 30,000 migrants in a private ICE jail at Guantanamo Bay.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that this deportation system, this Guantanamo Migrant Detention Center, has been passed down from administration to administration. They're really, from Democrats to Republicans, there has been no significant change between administrations.
Jose Olivares, I want to thank you for being with us. Investigative journalist. We'll link to your piece in The Guardian. Revealed U.S. firm running Guantanamo migrant jail accused of over rights abuses, as well as your piece for Drop Site about Biden giving Trump the blueprint. We'll also do an interview with you in Spanish after the show and post on our Spanish website, democracynow.org. Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give. Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. We turn now to an effort to hold the Biden administration accountable for their role in Israel's war in Gaza. The DC-based nonprofit Dawn has formally asked the International Criminal Court to investigate former Secretary of State Antony Blinken, former Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and President Joe Biden for their, quote, accessorial roles in aiding and abetting, as well as intentionally contributing to Israeli war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. These crimes include those identified in the ICC's arrest warrants issued last year against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. We're joined right now by Reed Brody, well-known veteran war crimes prosecutor on the board of Dawn. Can you explain the significance of this suit as we speak to you in Geneva, Switzerland, Reed?
Sure. As you said, Amy, in November, the ICC issued warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant for starvation as a method of warfare, for intentionally directing attacks against civilians, for the crime against humanity of murder and of persecution. But they didn't act alone. And under the ICC statute, you can also be held liable for aiding and abetting a crime. And in order to do that, you have to have assisted in the commission of the crime with knowledge that the crime was being committed or was going to be committed in the ordinary course of events. And that's what we say that Biden, Blinken, and Lloyd Austin did here. The bombs that Israel has used to destroy schools, hospitals, and homes in Gaza were American bombs that they provided. Israel's campaign of murder and persecution was carried out with political support that they ensured. And these officials were aware, as we explained in the complaint, that Israel was committing these crimes, and yet they ensured that the political, diplomatic, and military support continued. Our submission has 172 pages. It shows in detail how Biden, Blinken, and Lloyd Austin ensured that $17.9 billion in military assistance was sent, how real-time intelligence was given, how the U.S. vetoed resolutions at the UN Security Council. And we show how in many instances these officials
we paid our property tax.
You can't, under American law, under international law, provide assistance. But I think our submission shows that Biden and Blinken
and also are not only morally and politically complicit, but they're legally complicit. And then, you know, then Reed, has there been any precedent in terms of the aiding and abetting of provision of in the past before the court? Absolutely. I mean, our case is based on very solid precedents. The best example is the case of Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia, who was convicted by the Special Court of Sierra Leone for aiding and abetting.
Okay, out of the way.
Two lemon leggings are made for a fit. The full spring rodeo to hold nothing back. No holding back from anything. Not one damn thing.
Tonight, NASA versus Elon Musk. So NASA's top officials are back at Musk. One former senior NASA official just moments ago told CNN that they never received an offer from Musk's SpaceX to bring home the 2 U.S. astronauts to space. They never got that offer. And why were they saying that? Well, they were responding to Musk's claims that the 2 astronauts have been left in space for political reasons. The astronauts themselves are up there, and they had to deny this.
We don't feel abandoned. We don't feel stuck. We don't feel stranded.
I mean, they are on the International Space Station having to respond to this. I mean, it's just so no one's where you go. This is really insane. Multiple astronauts going after Musk after these claims, including Andreas Jorgensen, who called Musk's claims a lie on X. Musk responded, and I'm going to just quote what Musk said. He called this astronaut, quote, fully retarded and an idiot. So on that note, let's bring in astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, the author of the new book World Tour of the Universe, Traveler's Guide to Blue Moons, Black Holes, Mars, Stars, and Everything Far. It's a prominent place on my bookshelf. I put it in the travel section. Should I ever get to travel? You know, when I we're not doing that second. Okay, this topic of what Musk says this is political. That Biden would bring them down. They have to be astronauts denying it on this vacation. NASA denies it. An astronaut says it's not true, and Musk uses those horrible words to respond to the person. And what is your response to all of this?
Well, let's go to the beginning of it all. The 2 astronauts were never stranded in any normal way to use that term. And they were joining a half a dozen other astronauts on the International Space Station. There's plenty of food. Maybe they didn't bring enough changes of underwear. I don't know. But that would be like the worst case scenario. They're both experienced astronauts. And, well, I don't remember whether it's the longest time they spent in 0G in their astronaut career. But it's a while, and so they have to adjust to that. But they're professional. So they're not stranded. Second, what a luxury it is to have a conversation about he said, she said, and who said what, when, I mean, think about it. We have options to bring them back from space. One of them is SpaceX. And And that's evidence to me that we are living in the future, that no one is worried about whether there exists a ship to bring them back. The Starliner for Boeing, that has a risk factor, that's who's not going to take that risk. So you push that aside, who's up next? There's SpaceX. I'm good with that. And the rest of this is just distraction.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is unfortunate. I think, you read it and you think about people reading it and using such words, especially people who have achieved so much and have run SpaceX. You have all of the things that someone has to speak like that. And that's really unfortunate.
Good job.
Let me ask you also, and then the other context here is,
Is everybody on the
right, so
floor?
then the city killer asteroid, I guess it's called.
Meanwhile,
Jeff?
Well, there's that.
bearing down on Earth.
So
Maybe
in
somebody
case we don't destroy it
Jeffrey?
ourselves,
Yeah.
there's something.
Is anybody on the floor?
Directly
Going back
behind
out?
you.
Up things down is vacillating all over the place, and now they're downplaying that particular asteroid, that is unlikely to
Not so much
hit.
downplaying, there's better evidence available to tighten the uncertainty circle such that Earth is basically no longer.
Alright, so
By the way, that circle still encloses. the
You
moon.
gotta cut it really,
So the moon's risk.
so if you're going straight into the cage right now, go forward. And there's a bird on the back. Now turn yourself
But
straight.
I know that asteroids are very
Straight now.
serious.
Like I had to
There's
run over this.
only so much